Hello and welcome to Agenda from Bengaluru. Young and carefree. Well, those two descriptions don't actually always go together. Teenagers and young adults are at a very vulnerable time in their life. There's exam stress, peer pressure. There are online horrors like cyberbullying and blue whale as well. Crimes against youngsters and children are always in the headlines. How do young people in this city cope? And where do they turn to if they want help? We're joined today by a great panel of people who are dealing with stress among young people and young people themselves. Now, you youngsters here, how many of you would say that you are actually experiencing stress in your daily lives?
All of us.
Quite a few of you, yeah, definitely quite a few of you. What would you say is your biggest source of stress?
I think for me it would be competition, because what happens is when you're in an environment of when you're studying, your parents know not only your marks, they know your friends' marks, they know your neighbors' marks, and automatically sort of the comparison starts at home about how good you are, how good they are, and it's difficult to to study, to focus in that environment.
So academic stress in particular is a big one at this stage. What about you?
I think for me, to focus on one thing is a major problem, because I am not in that zone to just focus on one thing, and I get distracted by a lot of other things. For example, social media as well, that every time you have to be up to date. If you're not, then your peer will be like, oh, you're an introvert and you're not an extrovert.
I think the main problem is the anxiety among youngsters, because they strive to do better every time academically. They want to fit in the boundaries of the society. So I think that is the major problem we face today.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on this?
For me, it's definitely all about career now that so much of competition is growing. So I feel career is something that really makes anyone go horror about it. Like they're always worried what will happen next. It's like, what if someone gets further than them, and what will happen next? What if they fail? So there's constant pressure, obviously from parents as well.
Yes.
There are parents who tell them to do engineering or go for medicine, but none of them tell them to do journalism or anything like that. Everyone is worried about how much are you going to earn in the future.
One of the biggest causes of stress in a person's life is if the person comes from a dysfunctional family. You particularly do not have anyone to speak to, and you have a lot to talk to, and since you grew up in that environment, you have that sense that maybe I'm always wrong, maybe I do not really fit in. And even when your friends love you so much, you just don't open up, and that kind of kills you inside.
The family is the core. The family is where you would hope to draw your strength from. Dr. Senthil Kumar Reddy, Additional Professor of Department of Psychiatry in NIMHANS. Is this time of life particularly vulnerable?
Absolutely, I think it is. It is actually probably the most vulnerable period of someone's growth and development, and the teen years and the young adult years are when someone's finding themselves. And what often can happen is there are so many different things, like a lot of people here have pointed out, their careers, their academic pressure, parental pressure, not just peer pressure, and then looking at what else that they themselves identify themselves with. So it's about individuation, sticking to family, and at the same time, if those areas are not supported from an environmental point of view, whether it's friends, family, more so importantly, it can actually lead to a lot of difficulties for a lot of people in that age group.
Is it also physiological as well as psychological? Is there a lot going on in the body that also adds to what they're facing?
Absolutely. So both biologically and psychologically, I think these are both interrelated areas, and they tend to actually cause a lot of the confusion for most people. So this is not something that a small percentage or a certain percentage of people in that age group experience. Most of them do. Some of them are able to sort of overcome it when they have a supportive environment, and but others may struggle, and it may be based on a variety of different factors. It's usually not one, and it's about how they have developed certain skills over that period of time.
Reema, you're a counselor, career guidance counselor at the Banjara Academy. Do young people come to you at all? Is there a hesitation? Do they resist coming to you for help? And if they do, what do they talk about?
I find that in the last few years awareness has increased to a very great extent, and especially children in Bangalore come forth even if they have nobody to bring them. I've seen a lot of girls and boys who come on their own to seek for guidance and help. Major issues like these girls were sharing with us is self-esteem. You're not assured. So if you're coming from a dysfunctional family, or whether for some reason you have not been told that you are good enough, to have that feeling that I may not be right, I may not be good enough, I may not be in the right path, or I may do the wrong thing, I'm headed nowhere. When that feeling is there with you, you carry that feeling with you in day-to-day life, that's when you really cannot feel happy. Everything becomes an issue. Every decision making that you have to do, everything becomes a problem. Added with things like loneliness, even though you live in a family, if you don't have that one person who does not understand you, you have this syndrome called living together loneliness. So you go through a lot of loneliness, which could add to all these pressures, and top all this up, lack of direction. We have so many options and so many ways, but information is there. You just have to log on to the internet and you can Google anything you like. But how do you know which one is the right choice?
I could see some nods coming from here. Do you agree? Did anything there particularly resonate with you?
She said, because today it's all about being presentable, and the competition arises so much that everybody out there is just judging you. Everybody is judgmental. Everybody is like what you eat, how you walk. Means everybody is out there just judging you as to how you look. So it's just as simple as that. I agree with her. And like sometimes parents are really orthodox. They do not give space to their children. So it is really difficult for the children to go and speak to them. So if the space is decreased, then the problem will be solved.
If the space is decreased. Now, we have a parent here also, Shantanu Bose. We've talked about pressure from the parents, and I'm sure that as a parent, that's the last thing you want to do to your child. With your children in this age group, what kind of struggles do you see them facing when it comes to, we're talking of course largely about urban children here.
So there is a lot of peer pressure.
Yes.
There is a lot of pressure from within to succeed. And that, as a parent, we have to find a balance between how much to push the child, because the child has to do well. Okay. But on the other side, what is the support mechanism that we can provide to be able to support the cause where the child is able to come back and discuss and deliberate on things that are very child-centric rather than a parent-centric. I have a son who went through class 12 last year, so it was a question of how much to kind of push him to perform, but at the same time, because 12 is a very important step. Yeah. At the same time, when if you don't, then he might lose out. If you do, then you have other issues. So how to balance? And I think the best way forward for me was to kind of do a lot of learning about my child myself. I needed to get into his life rather than him, getting him into my life.
Fitting into what your
perspectives are.
Yes.
So to understand him, the word loosely is to say that I need to get him to understanding is a very loose word, I would say, but to be part of his life, his friends, his activities, so that he could come back and talk about, so for example, I asked him about blue whale.
Yes.
From him, I learned about blue whale from him. I said, you tell me what is this. I didn't go to the net and try to search. So he said, no, you don't worry about that. So he knew that I was asking him for next step. So I said, no, you have to know about it, because you need to know, I need to know, we all need to know.
Are there enough regulations in place? Is it possible to have regulations to protect especially young people from those dangers out there?